All right, we are live. We're going to be analyzing this deal in Lakewood, Ohio. And I picked Cleveland today, just a little bit of area west of Cleveland, because we just had a guest on, just recorded a podcast with the CEO and founder of Sim Capital. One of his three primary markets is Cleveland. So I figured, hey, let's take a look in his area and see what's going on. So let's back up. Let's share some of the research that I've done for all of you. So Cuyahoga County includes some parts of Cleveland, and this county is run by a housing authority called Cuyahoga County Housing Authority. Now, on these properties, we have a bunch of payment standards that they actually list out on their website by zip code right here. So let me see if I can kind of bring it over so you guys can see on Instagram. You can see here. Okay, so now we have the zip codes and the bedroom count and what the payment standards are. You guys can see that all listed out there. And you guys can see if your zip code is not in one of these zip codes, you can just click on primary and that'll give you other payment standards. So we're going to use these numbers instead of the HUD FMR that we typically do because whenever you get more accurate numbers that's published by a local housing authority in their jurisdiction, I always tend to use these, right? The hot FMR is just something I typically go for if I see something that's really quick, really fast. And that's because CMHA, so Cuyahoga Housing Authority, has established payment standards between 90% and 110% of the FMR. So this tells you that they actually adjust upwards and downwards the FMR that's been determined by HUD based on the zip codes and based on their understanding. So for this property at 1619 Larchmont Ave, zip code is 44107. I was just trying to pick a property that's a little bit cheaper because when I was in Lakewood, it was kind of hard to find anything in the hundreds, and it seems like 250 was the lowest one on this side here. And I picked it because I found that they had better schools, so 6 out of 10s, 8 out of 10. So I'm just thinking about buying a home in a good school district for, let's just say, a single mom with a couple of kids and they just need a stable roof over their heads. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to first analyze this deal by checking out the condition of the home. This property looks pretty turnkey, which is another reason why I picked it out because now you can quickly assess what is your buy box for a quote unquote turnkey property in this area of Lakewood that will allow you to cash flow X percentage of money. Because you can see it's pretty much brand new bathrooms. Money you need to put in like something like curtain rods, maybe just check on the windows, make sure everything's good. So maybe some cleanup here in the shed, but that shouldn't cost you anything more than 2 or 3 grand, just kind of setting that aside that number. Let me do a quick street view of this area. Looks like a suburban neighborhood almost. I'm not seeing any big signs of boarded up homes. Seems like everybody has a front porch around here to hang out. Yeah, very interesting type of homes. You just hang out on the front porch, huh? Interesting. Okay, so pretty average neighborhood. When I looked up the crime score on topapp.com, you can just go to tophap.com, click on neighborhood, and you'll see that the crime score that we have is 121. It's not bad considering some parts of Cleveland you are in the very, very dark purple 130, 140, 150s. So not the worst of the crime, and you have a decent to above average school district here. So that's why I was looking in this area. Okay. Now that we have the payment standard, let me make sure I note that down in my spreadsheet. Cuyahoga. Cuyahoga. Okay. And this is going to be a 4 bed. I just want to get all these rents. 3 bed is 1788. And that's your rent ceiling. And you have your 4 bedroom at 1896. Now keep in mind, payment standards include utilities. So if you don't include it, chances are it's going to be a little bit lower. All right. I love talking about the rent reasonableness test because this is so important. CMHA will check to make sure the rent is affordable for the family and also reasonable for the area and amenities. This is where you got to say, hey, the gross rent for units equals the sum of rent and tenant pay utilities must be reasonable. Rent reasonableness is defined as one that does not exceed gross rent charge for comparable unassisted units in the same area. So this is the test I always tell all of you about, and this is them listing it right out on their website. So in order to get the rents for an unassisted unit, we have to go to owners, go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count, and get the rents. Now, on this, you'll see that on average for 25 units within a 0.52-mile radius, the average rent here is $16.38. Cool. $16.38. That's not bad. It's pretty close to $17.88. So I'm going to assume that I can get $16.38 as my gross rent for this property. That's assuming a 0.52-mile radius. Let me put that in there. All right, 1616. Just get all these numbers now just because my partners know exactly how I underwrite. So I want to make sure I'm getting these numbers in. 1476. All right, now let me check the rents for a floor bedroom because I always want to see whether or not it's worth the effort to increase your rents. And boom, it does not make sense. See how the rents actually drops to 1559. So really, there's not that significant demand for a 4-bedroom compared to a 3-bedroom. See how it's 1559. So this is definitely not worth my time to convert this property from a 6-bed to a 3-bed. Wow, that's really good to know. That's not very much the norm, but that's a good data point for you to have. And that's a great example of why you got to do your research before you just assume you're going to add bedroom counts, and that will give you extra rents. Okay. All right. Let's get some numbers here. So the property here was listed for 249. Let's punch that in, 249,000. Renovations for this property is pretty much turnkey. I might just set aside just maybe $1,500 for the roof, just in case I see something. Maybe set aside some money for a sewer inspection. So let me go ahead and plug that in. Go to rehab calculator. I'm going to zero everything else. I'll probably have 2 high pressure flush toilets so I can reduce the amount of clogs. I'm not going to be changing any flooring. Looks pretty good for the most part to repair, but maybe there's some touch-up paint. So I'm going to leave about $300 for touch-up paint, $500 for landscaping, some exterior cleanup, and I'm going to leave aside $1,500 for the roof, just in case there's something in there or some patching that needs to be done. So that's about $3,800 rehab. Okay. Now, for my rents, I'm going to take the lower of the two when I to compare 1788, which is the payment standard, against the market rent, which is 1638. So I'm going to do 1650 here just to keep it nice and round. And let's assume that this is going to be a 25% down. So that equals to the asking price, which is B4, multiplied by the down payment percentage of 25%, and that's 62,250. In order to find out how much I need to finance it as, I'm assuming conventional loan. So I'm going to do asking price, subtract by the cash down payment. And I'm going to assume my interest rate is 8%. I'm going to start this at 3.1. Let's just do 3.124 right now. Just keep days easy. Okay, I got no more commissions here. I got 2.5% closing costs, some renovations reserved. So that gives me enough money to continue forward. And I'm going to go grab the property taxes, which is, whoa, 407. That's high. 407 and $93 for insurance. So I'm going to do equals 93 times 1.2. Just so that I'm assuming that the insurance policy for an investment property is going to be a little bit more expensive. So hence why I'm adding a 20% premium by multiplying it by 1.2. Okay. I got 10% for maintenance, 8% for property management, and I got, we'll put this at 5% for vacancy, just because you're going to get a little bit more turnover. Colder area, not the threat of crime. So 5% feels pretty good to me. So on this deal, if you rent it out for 3-bedroom and you get $1,650, you will be cash flowing a negative $651 on this deal. That is not a deal because that's a negative 10.8% cash and cash return. Assuming your purchase price was $249,000 with a $3,800 rehab, with a 25% down and a mortgage rate of 8%. So assuming like a DSCR loan. Okay. All right. I'm going to adjust these numbers so I can figure out what's it going to take for this to be a 10% return, not negative return, 10% positive return assuming everything else stays constant. Let me change this to 150. Still not a deal. I had to buy this bar for like 80 grand. Yeah. 85, 90. That's crazy. 88,000. So I would have to buy a turnkey property for $88,000 because of where the rents are currently. If everything else stayed the same, and that would yield me a 10% cash and cash return. So this tells me really quickly that this might not be the best area if my target yield is 10%. Right? That's not it's not a good sign at all. And there's no rooms to add extra bedrooms to get extra rents on this property. So the next thing I want to do is, well, what if there is a creative finance way to do it, such as a subject to transaction? So in order to look up the underlying loan that you might be able to take over subject to this financing, you have to go to property and plug in the address. And when we plug in the details, you can click on the mortgage and transaction history, right? You get here by putting an address, clicking the details section, click on the mortgage transaction history. And this, if there is an underlying loan, here it is, okay? All right. So the loan here, there's a $92,700 loan. Okay, let's plug this number in. 92,700. The interest rate is 5.37. So almost 5.37. This loan started in July 22nd, 2003. July 22nd, 2003. Wow, that's a long time ago. Okay. So you can see that the payments now on this loan is mostly principal, which is great. Great that it's a 5.37% loan. I'm surprised they never refinance it. Then there's another loan. They must have taken the home equity line on this in 04 for 14 grand at 5.71%. This is a line of credit, so I'm not even sure if this loan is still in place. Let me ignore this just to kind of keep things a little bit simple. All right. What I want to do is I need to figure out, okay, if I buy this property for $249,000, what is going to be my principal amount? So let me try to figure out what the principal amount is. So this is July 2003. That's 21 years. Go the same date, 7, 22, 23, 11, 30. Let me see what the amortization schedule looks like. So if this started, I'm trying to get my principal balance. My principal balance in March of 2024, my principal balance is 45,622.21. 45,622.21. Okay. Let me just paste that here. Oops. What's the value? Okay. So in order for me to figure out how much equity the property has, you had to take your asking price, subtract the down payment, subtract this number, which is the principal balance remaining. And this is how much equity the seller has in the deal that I will request for them to sell or finance it. Now, if I ask them to finance it at 0% interest rate, what does that get me? That's still not good enough, right? That's not good enough because that adds another $400 to the principal payment, even if there's no interest. It's principal only payments. So the only way to make this a deal is if you acquire on the market for this, or you try to get the seller like, okay, you're clearly not selling this deal at its current price because you've been on the market for 87 days and you still haven't sold. Let me see the sales history. Okay, so they've been dropping it since 260. They've been dropping it for 2 months. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to play around with the asking price so that the seller finance piece lowers enough so that my monthly payment lowers enough for me to cash flow. So let's see, 125, 100, whatever, lower my down payment. It's just not a good deal. This is just not a good deal. Yeah, there's really there's no way to sell was going to go for that. Yeah. So this gives me a pretty good indication that there's no deal here on the creative side because in order for you to pitch a creative deal, you have to be able to tell the seller, hey, I can give you the price that you want, and if you can give me the terms I'm looking for. Hi. 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 Excuse me. All right. So I'm going to wrap up this live so I can go play with my daughter. So, what did we learn today, guys? We learned to one, look at the property, look at the existing condition of the property. And then we looked at the street view to check the condition of the neighborhood. We checked the schools to see what type of neighborhood it is and whether or not it's desirable. Then we got the payment standards. And in this way, we actually looked up the county that's responsible for the Section 8 program at cmha.net. And if you came here, you would have seen that they actually list out all the payment standards by zip code on their standards. And this is important because you want to understand what type of adjustments they have made to the HUD FMR number. So this is actually the more accurate number. And then when you compare that to the market rent, we saw that there wasn't a reason for you to turn this into a 4-bedroom because the average rent actually went down for a 4-bedroom when compared to a 3-bedroom. So that's what we learned here. We got the crime score here. This was 121 on a crime score. And when we played around with the numbers, we said, hey, we messed around with the properties and we saw that 25% down at 8% interest rate and with zero everything else now. At 8% interest rate, and the finance amount is going to equal the asking price minus the down payment. This was clearly not a deal because the rent just was not high enough to support the purchase price. So that tells me that in order for this to be a cash flowing property at 10%, we have to buy the property at $88,000, which is seemingly unlikely. So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. I hope you guys all spent some quality time with your family and friends today because I'm going to go and spend some time with my daughter. Have an amazing night, everybody. And again, just remember, this was not investment advice, not soliciting any investments, simply showing you the work I do every single day to determine my buy boxes. And then more importantly, when someone tells me about an area or a market, you go check it out. You try to learn it. You try to gauge your understanding. And today was just a quick way for you to understand, hey, if I ever see a turnkey property in Lakewood and it's 3 bedrooms, turnkey, and I see it's 88 grand, I'm going to jump on that right away. Right? So that's what you want to know. And that's what you want to be aware of. And that allows you to just focus on the properties that will allow you to not burn out so that you don't spend all that time analyzing deals. And once you determine your buy boxes, that just makes life a lot easier. All right. Have an amazing day, everybody. I'll be back here again with a live tomorrow.